Hi everybody, welcome back. This is Broken Dice bringing you another installment of my Iberian solo wargaming campaign, Rome in Iberia. Now, it's been a couple of months, about almost 2 months since I've actually done a video in this project, so we're going to do a quick little review of some things that are highly important and kind of directly affect the game. But let's get into this real quick here. Obviously, Rome's invasion of Iberia took about 200 years. We're consolidating this down into a tabletop wargaming campaign, so we're not going to spend 200 years on this. The Romans were very good at divide and conquer, separating tribes out, assisting some to attack others, bribing some. They were very good at it. Matter of fact, I think they honed their skills for this sort of diplomatic maneuvering and in Iberia. This is where they honed their skills, and the Gauls later on during Caesar's time kind of felt the effects of this is how the Romans can do business. They figured this out, I think, during the Iberian campaign, and it really showed itself when they invaded Gaul. All right. In the preceding rounds, the Romans did very well in the diplomatic phase, and this is a very important phase for the campaign. They were able to thwart most attempts at aid coming to whatever tribe they were attacking. So we're going to talk about in a kind of a really short explanation of the method of diplomacy now, because that really plays a big part in this game. Okay, as you can see, this map has all the tribes. Now, this is not a map I designed. I just pulled it off the web, and the red flags on this map represent the territories that the Romans have already conquered. The Laietani up in the northeast are the targets of their invasion, and the Laietani are trying to gain aid from all the surrounding tribes other than the Lusitani, because they've been subdued by the Romans. All right, campaign diplomacy. Yeah, if you want a more detailed explanation, you can go back to the very first introductory video I did on this. But roughly what it is I rolled a dice for each of those territories, gave them a hard, fast number, whatever the dice was. And this is all supposed to represent the different relationships that the tribes have with each other. Now, how that plays out is like if the Romans are attacking a tribe, that tribe has a diplomatic rating of its own. It rolls a dice and adds that dice roll to theirs. If theirs is greater than the Romans' attempt to thwart their call for aid, then they get a number of units equal to how much they won that roll by, up to a maximum of 3 per territory. So you don't want it to become unmanageable, where each territory, it could, I mean, if you have one territory that's surrounded by 3 and you win a roll by 3 for each territory, you have 9 extra units coming onto the table. So it will take some gaming gymnastics really to pull that off if you didn't have enough models. So you'd have to recycle units and do all that kind of stuff. But for the Romans, because they had varying degrees of success diplomatically with the Iberian tribes, and normally they would help one, like I said, and then help them against an enemy, and then bribe somebody else to come after them, and really keeping this divide and conquer thing going. So to represent that, I give the Romans a random diplomacy rating every campaign turn. So they have to roll a die 6. So they can be a 1 at one time, and then perhaps a different governor comes in and different generals. They treat the public. Then they may have a 6 diplomatic rating, so they may have a better chance of thwarting these efforts by the Iberians to get aid from the surrounding tribes. That's it in a nutshell. Well, in the upcoming battle with the Laietani were very successful in their diplomatic struggle, and they got 7 additional units from 3 different territories. So, yeah, they're going to have a whole extra division to bring onto the table in this next battle. Okay. Oh yeah, and one thing I wanted to make sure I pointed out, that whichever side wins this next battle, those surviving units can make their way to the next battle if it's not over with. And so they could come to their aid in time, maybe, to turn the tide, as it would. But because I have 2 battles going on basically simultaneously, the tables had to be split up. Now my tables are 30 inches by basically 2.5 feet by 6 feet. And so each battle is going to be taking place on that size of a table. So what I did was I reduced the movement in half and reduced the shooting in half. So basically, if you move 6, now you move 3. If you move 9 for cavalry, I made it a 5, 4.5, rounded up to 5. That way cavalry still has that mobility edge. All right, let's get into turn 1. Basic setup, cavalry on the right. You see the Roman cavalry with the Roman general up on the top left of the screen. Then we go down with our cohorts across the front, fronted there by some skirmishers. And at the bottom, we see our Iberian infantry. Here's another shot more towards the center of the table. And here's a long shot. Now this is after the first movement and charging or engagement, let's just say. Okay, so the way I did my Romans was instead of like in a triplex aces, I would have a commander of the first line, commander of the second line, commander of the third line. And then I would have my overall general. So the overall general in this instance issued a general advance for the first line, including the commander, and so they move out. Now, the Iberians had the first turn, and 2 of their divisions only moved 1 move, so they only moved 3 inches, where the other the division closest, the one at the bottom of the screen where the cavalry is fighting, they moved 2 moves, which put them really close to the Romans, and the Romans on their turn rolled really well, and so we obviously have the combat here at the lower part of this picture between the Roman cavalry led by the Roman general and the first cohort involved in a fight with some Iberian infantry. All right, here's a close-up. All right, this is the first cohort fighting the Iberian infantry, and obviously we have the Roman general and his cavalry fighting the Iberians. Now, obviously the Iberian cavalry countercharged when they were charged by the Roman cavalry, so it's going to be a really tough fight because basically they're both standard size units, and they both have leaders with them, although the Iberian cavalry are led by the division commander. So he only adds 1, where the Roman general adds 3 in the attack phase. All right, here's another close-up. Oh, just a side note, this is my Roman cavalry that I put on the War Games Atlantic horses. Took them off those skinny little metal horses from Warlord Games and put them on these. I just think they look better in comparison to the Victrix models. Okay, didn't go well for the Iberian cavalry. They got waxed really bad, wiped off the map. The Romans did like a sweeping advance and then turned to face the the second ranks of the Iberians. And the Iberians, due to proximity, had to turn and face the Roman cavalry. Now, this obviously takes place at the end of the turn when, you know, you're getting for the Romans. And I'm not so sure I should have done this with my Iberians, turned them so early, but at the beginning of the move, they would have had to turn to face this unit anyway, so it's not going to be a terrible omission on my part, but we'll see. And then we take another look here. Let's look at this combat. Now, this was, I thought, they were going to make quick work of these Iberian infantry. First, you got the Pilum, and that takes away one of their morale saves, armor, and so they're down to a 6 anyway. But the Romans only did 4 damage. The Iberians did 2 back. They did lose by 2, but they rolled really well, and they held their ground in good order. So that could play a little bit of a part. And so we can see in reference now to the rest of the Roman line and how close they are to the Iberians. And if we take a look at the picture on the left, that shows the very far end of the battlefield. And really at the end of the combat, end of the movement phase, this is where everybody wound up. And the picture on the right shows a long, narrow view of the battlefield. And you can see the sort of narrow fight that's going on here. And that's why, you know, I had to do some adjustments in the movement rates and the shooting rates, because everybody's on top of everybody really quickly. All right, here we go again. We get another photo, somewhat a similar photo, but yeah. And back again to this far left. Now, this unit of cavalry for the Iberians, they had no one in front of them. So they're kind of free to maneuver. And at the end, they had to turn and face these Romans. Again, that would be the unit, if they go first next turn, they would have to turn and face them anyway, because they would be in their front view. So again, it's one of those, I may have done it a little bit out of order, but not to the point I think it'll be detrimental to the game itself. You see these red dice, these are those penalties from losing the last game that have been put on the Romans. It shows them at 1 less stamina. And the 5th cohort, at least they're supported by some skirmishers. But the 7th, it's all dangling out there by itself. So that Roman second line may need to get there pretty quickly. So we shall see. And that brings us to the end of turn 1. I think it's going to be a quick, bloody fight. I think turn 2, possibly by turn 3, we'll know how this is turning out. Unless, of course, the Iberians are able to hang in there. If they win quickly, if they're able to overwhelm a cohort or two and maybe turn the tide a little bit where they have some real tactical options. But I never bet against a Roman cohort in combat. I mean, I've seen them surrounded and hang in there. So anyway, that's the end of turn 1. If you like this kind of thing, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. If you haven't subscribed, please do. If you like this sort of thing, I enjoy this. I'm kind of in no man's land for Hail Caesar, so I'm going to get my models on the table one way or the other, and this seems to be my preferred method right now. So that's it for me. Everyone stay safe, stay well. Turn 2's coming up, should be in a week or so, and I think it'll be interesting. So we'll see you next time.